Hello, very excited to have Dom, also known as Elly Griffiths, with me today. Hi, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hi, Donna. Well, I'm really delighted to be here. I'm Elly Griffiths. In fact, I'm going to, while we're online, change my name because my writing name is Elly Griffiths. I'm just going to put that up on screen. But as you know me as Domenica, which is my real name, which weirdly sounds more made up than Elly Griffiths. But I'm the author of the Dr. Ruth Galloway Mysteries and the Brighton Mysteries, and a couple of books that started off as standalones that are now a series starring Harbinder Kaur, featuring Harbinder Kaur.
Did you always know that you wanted to be a writer?
I really did, actually. Yeah, I wanted to be a writer even before I kind of knew what a writer was. You know, before I went to school, I used to do these little picture books, and my dad was sort of sew the margin together for me. And so I kind of always wanted to sort of produce the books. I don't know why. And when I was 11, I wrote my first novel, which of course has never been published, but it's called The Hair of the Dog, which might have been something my parents talked about. But I think it was very influenced by Agatha Christie, who I started reading at the same age. It's about a group of children in a little village, a group of young people, not children, in a little village, where nothing much happens. So they decide to stage a fake crime to bring media there, and it turns into a real murder. So it's not a bad, how to say, it's not a bad plot, I don't think. But yeah, obviously never published. And when I was at secondary school, I used to write little episodes of Starsky and Hutch. Now, you're a bit young for Starsky and Hutch, Donna, but you know who they are. So I was a big Starsky and Hutch fan, and I used to write these little stories about them. And I always remember one week I wrote a story in which Starsky died. And he was my favorite as well. And I remember when people reading it in class, and some of them cried. And I quite liked that. You know, I liked that. I thought really it was, oh, I might know how to do this. You know, I might have got the secret to this, you know, that you can make people laugh and they could make you cry. So that was my first feeling of, oh, I know how to do this. But like a lot of writers, it was a long, long time before it was actually published. I read English at university. I worked in a library for a while. Then I got a job at HarperCollins. I ended up being publicity director at HarperCollins for children's fiction. Still didn't write anything. And only started my first published book when I was on maternity leave, expecting my twins, who are now 24. So I guess 25 years ago, I wrote what became my first published book. That was published as Domenica de Rosa, published 4 books as Domenica, and then had an idea for a crime novel.
When you were on maternity leave, what was it that made you sit down and think, okay, now's the time, I'm going to finally write my book?
That's a good question. I think it was more a sort of realization that it was a bit of time away from publishing, which I have to say I loved. I loved working publishing. You know, I loved being an editor, loved all that, had great friends there, still friends with them today. But it had sort of made me forget that what I really wanted to do was write the actual book. So I think it was having a bit of time away from them, because I had twins and a few complications. I had a slightly longer maternity leave than most. And I think it was just the sort of distance. And I had a story in my head about my dad, who was came over from Italy with his parents after the First World War. And they lived in the kind of Italian quarter of London, you know, Clerkenwell district. And I had an idea about that. And the book was eventually called The Italian Quarter. But I didn't finish it until the twins were about 4. So I didn't finish it on maternity leave. But I think it was just that. It was the bit of space, a bit of time, a bit of time away from sort of publishing, because as you know, and it's not wrong at all, but publishing is big business. You know, it's about money. And I teach creative writing, and I always say to my students that if a publisher only publishes a book for one reason only, and that's to make money, and that's not wrong because they're venture capitalists, but you know, it's kind of quite a commercial world. So I think it was just a little time away from that world.
So if you're working in children's books and then you wrote a sort of historical, then how did that turn into crime?
Well, it's interesting, isn't it? I obviously had always been drawn to crime, so to speak, or to crime writing, because that first book, you know, when I was 11, and I guess in a way, Starsky and Hutch is a police procedural, isn't it? So I guess I was always drawn to the genre in a way. But my first 4 books, my first Domenica books, were all, I suppose, I really don't like these classifications really, but I suppose you'd call them women's fiction. They're about families, relationships, that sort of thing, set in Italy because my family are from Italy. But then I had an idea because my husband Andy had changed careers. So he was a lawyer when I met him, but he'd always wanted to be an archaeologist. And so he went back to university when our kids were quite young and studied archaeology, cheer student like yourself. So he went back to university and did that. So I had a little bit of an idea about a forensic archaeologist. And I didn't really think at the time that it would turn into a crime novel. But when I showed it to my agent, she said, she said, this is crime. You need a crime name. So that's how I became Elly Griffiths.
Oh, I love that you have like a normal name and then a crime name.
I know, and I think it was partly because, I mean, and anyone who knows the two names obviously assumes Domenica de Rosa is made up and Elly Griffiths is real. But I think it was, I think the thinking was, and I can understand why they thought this, was that Elly Griffiths, one sounded made up, Domenica de Rosa sounded made up, and also sounded very romantic. It did sound like a sort of romantic fiction writer, and they wanted something a bit grittier. And my grandma was Ellen Griffiths, so originally I wanted Ellen Griffiths, and I'm not even sure how I became Elly. And I said to my editor recently, can you remember how I became Elly? And she said, I think it just looked a bit tidier. And you can see on the books, it is quite tidy between the G and the F. But another thing is that when I was in publishing, we always say to writers that authors with surnames that begin FGH sell more. And that's meant to be because it's on eye level in the shops. You've got A there and Z there, and Elly Griffiths on eye level. I don't think that's true, really, because it depends where you start the shelving, doesn't it? But anyhow, that's how I became Elly Griffiths.
I'm sure Mike Craven and Mark Bingham would.
They've done all right, haven't they? You know, J.K. Rowling hasn't really affected her career particularly. Yeah, yes, really. But John Grisham, he fits the trend. Yeah, Philippa Gregory. There's a few G names.
Yeah. I feel like I'm being stalked on social media by Mike Craven at the minute. I can't escape his face. It's everywhere.
Oh, well, he's so brilliant, isn't it? It was lovely to see him winning the Steel Dagger the other night. You know, he's a terrific talent, I think, really, and such a nice guy. So you could be stalked by worse people, Donna.
I do. He's kind of terrifying looking.
Well, he certainly looks sort of imposing, doesn't he? I have to say, yes.
Yeah, but he is lovely. I saw him recently in Wigan, but he said he was only going to talk to me when I was eating. I guess,
oh well.
Yeah, I guess because I couldn't respond.
Chance to start eating then, in case Mike Craven turns up.
Yeah.
Maybe it's like a sort of one of those monsters, you know, that you have to say their name 3 times and they appear. So maybe if we do it now, Mike Craven, Mike Craven, Mike Craven. Let's see.
Yeah.
Can't see him yet, but you never know.
You never know, yeah. He's probably off somewhere anyway. He's so busy at the minute, isn't he?
Yeah, he is. Yeah, but he's brilliant. And I think he's moving to Brighton, actually, which is going to be great to have him nearby.
Much like yourself, you've been very busy this week as well, I've noticed. You've been all over the place.
I've had a very busy few weeks, actually, which is a bit bad organisation from my point of view, because I told, I did think after lockdown and not doing anything, I discussed with my publicist who's wonderful, doing a little bit less. But this month has been, I had a week doing some children's events because one of my children's books came out. So I did that. And I had a week in Italy, which I shouldn't complain about at all because that was lovely. I had a week in doing the literary festival in Guernsey, and then I came back and immediately did something in Norfolk. So it's just been a bit rushing around. And last weekend I had a family wedding, which again was lovely, nothing to do with it. But it just means that I have been whizzing around, I have to say.
Yeah, it's exhausted, isn't it? Because I went up to Wigan, and then the following weekend I went to Leek for a wedding, and then there's Harrogate coming up, and then I'm going to Blackpool, and living down south, it's really tiring, really expensive.
It is, and there's no reason why travelling on a train, sitting quietly, reading a book or eating is tiring, but it really is, isn't it? You feel exhausted at the end of it all. But yeah, glad you're going to be at Harrogate. I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah, me too. I can't wait. Love it. So if you were to be picked up and transported into one of your books as a character, which book would you choose?
Oh, what a good question. I haven't been asked that before. Let me think about it. Do you know, I'm wondering if I might go for the Brighton Mysteries rather than the Ruth books. Other Ruth books are set in Norfolk, which I absolutely love, and a very beautiful part of the country. But I've been there, obviously, and I've never been to 1950s or 60s Brighton. So I think I might really enjoy that, you know. And I also, like a lot of people, maybe I'm a bit of a thwarted actor. I've always wanted to act, as well as always wanted to write. I did a bit of me sort of wanted to act as well. I did lots of it at school and university. So I'd kind of quite like to be for a little while in some sort of touring rep production in the 1950s or 60s, you know, going on every night and doing the play and then coming home and staying in digs. And I'm not sure that I'd love that, but you know, that was my mum's life, because she was brought up by her dad, quite unusual then to be a single parent family. And that was what they did. They just traveled around the country all the time, because he was in rep and he was a comedian, a musical comedian. So they just traveled around all the time. It's really, I don't think I'd love it as a life, but maybe I would like to do it for a bit.
Yeah, that sounds awesome.
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? You know, and also I remember my mum saying that when she went to school for the first time, which was when she was about 12, and she's the inspiration for my books about justice. She said she didn't have any friends her own age, because all her friends were like sword swallowers and ventriloquists and you know, dancers and that and I'm, you know, maybe that's not ideal, but it also does sound quite cool, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. Which of your characters is the most fun to write, and which gives you the most trouble?
Justice is definitely the most fun. So those are the children's books. And I sometimes like do a chapter of Justice on a Friday just to cheer myself up if I've had a hard week. So she's probably the only character that I would just write for fun. And I think that's where they just started, because nobody said to me, please, Ellie, write a children's book. It was more that I just really wanted to write them and I just find them fun. And so definitely she's the one that gives me least trouble. I guess that they're set in the past. There's not too much to check, not too much sort of forensics to check, really. The boarding school where she lives is sort of my own creation, so I can make it whatever I want it to be. They're quite short, you know, all those things. So they are the easiest. Who gives me the most trouble? Well, I think Ruth gives me quite a lot of trouble, actually, because although in some ways she's the character I feel closest to, although I have to say in character we're not particularly similar, but I guess I sort of feel I know her really well, but she just doesn't always do what I want. Like, for example, I set her up with a lovely man called Frank. You know, I thought, you know, this thing with Nelson, it's got to be broken, and maybe it can be broken if I find another lovely boyfriend. So I gave her Frank, who was good looking, kept saying he looked like George Clooney. He's American, he's a historian, he's very clever, he's very nice. Could she end up with Frank? She just refused to. So I think Ruth gives me the most trouble.
Oh dear, yeah, they're just sods, aren't they, really?
They are, and it's interesting though, isn't it? I find that quite interesting, and I don't go too far down that route with my creative writing students, but I think it is one of the interesting things about writing is that you can have the best laid plans and they don't work out. And again, that's something that I learned from publishing, because of course, if publishers knew what was going to be to sell, if they knew what was going to be the next big thing, they would just say to their writers, write it. We happen to know that books about librarians who solve murders in Kidderminster are really big, so go and write one of those. Actually, it does sound quite good, but anyhow, you would do that, but publishers don't know what's going to sell, really. There's always something that's a big surprise, and writers don't quite know where their books are going to end up. So I do think that is frustrating, but it is one of the lovely things about it. You're never quite sure what you're going to write. You know, you can start. I remember Elizabeth Hayden saying that one of her books, I can't remember, she started off as erotic fiction, and she's like, great, brilliant, erotic fiction. Then, oh my God, there's a dead body. It's a crime novel. You don't always know where you're going.
So many crime writers are like, I can't write romance because I'd want to kill someone. I just can't do it.
And actually, looking back, my first 4 books, you know, by the romantically named Domenica De Rosa, there are quite a lot of mysteries in them, and a couple of dead bodies. So yes, probably I was already a crime writer, but I didn't know it.
That leads kind of nicely to my next question. If you were to be a fictional killer, how would you kill your victims?
Oh, you ask good questions, Donna. Well, I have heard from various sources that the best, the most foolproof murder is probably the simplest, and it's probably is just pushing someone down the stairs and then going to help them, and if they're not quite dead, finishing them off whilst supposedly helping them. So I guess that's but I can't see myself doing any murder in real life. I can't see myself doing that, so I'm not terribly strong, and I certainly wouldn't know how to finish someone off when I got to the bottom of the stairs. So I guess, it would be some sort of people do tell you good things. That only this week somebody told me that if you wanted to kill someone, insulin, which I've done in a couple of books, to inject them between their toes or something. So all those things are good, but I can't see myself doing it. One, I'm very squeamish, which is why there's not much blood and gore in my books. Though of course there are a lot of deaths, but not much. So I'm very squeamish. I'm one of those people who really hates talking about anything medical. So it's been a nightmare the last few years, everyone talking about, ooh, I've got a slight little cough, I wonder what that could be. Oh, don't tell me about that. No, can't bear it. It's a bit phlegmy. No, shush, don't say that. So I can't bear talking about anything medical, so sort of poisons and things are out. So, and also the other thing is, if I'd done a really, really clever murder, like one of the ones in crime fiction, I won't be able to resist showing off about it. So I just think I'm not cut out to be a murderer.
No, one of my Mark Billingham randomly said that he'd drown his wife in a swimming pool. I like, well, firstly, the first person they look at is the partner.
Exactly.
Secondly, like, seriously, in your own swimming pool, like, just no.
No, that's a very bad murder, and also his wife's lovely, so I'm sure he thinks so too. So yes, not a good murder at all. No,
no,
harder.
very disappointed. Yeah.
I said Tom would solve that in seconds, wouldn't he?
Yeah, I need to have words with him. Although I think he was quite freaked out after he finished speaking to me. But yeah. Okay, so if you were,
how would you do it as a crime fiction reader?
Well,
and forensics expert.
Well, the funny thing is, I was asked this question, and my immediate answer was stab someone 100 times. I don't really know why, but it's because I have someone in mind.
Okay.
If I thought about it properly, then I would do it, so that I wouldn't get caught and stuff. But yeah, my immediate reaction was to just stab someone over and over again.
Well, yeah, that might leave a bit of a forensics trail, as you would know better than me. But
yeah, apparently the 100 means that I need therapy of some kind as well. Which is fair enough.
Yes, either that or it's an Agatha Christie-esque thing where 100 people did it or something.
Oh no, I'd want to do every single one.
Okay.
Yeah. I really despise this person, and I am actually writing a book where I have killed him quite horrendously and tortured him a lot.
Well, I've got to say, I have killed a few people in my books that I don't like very much, and it's lovely therapy. I don't think anyone would follow the trail, but I've either killed them or made them the killer, and I've quite enjoyed doing it.
Yeah, it's great fun. Yeah, I loved it. If I could not ever hurt him in real life, which I can't, and I wouldn't want to.
Yes, either make him some sort of even more pathetic character. Make him some. Yes, I'm sure you could think of a way.
Yeah, I don't know. It's quite pathetic anyway. So, a question that I stopped asking, but seems to get interesting answers, is how do you find names for your characters?
That is a good question, and it is a bit of an issue, really. Again, when I teach, I say to my students, one of the things that we do, like as a sort of getting to know you exercise, also helps me remember their names, is I say to them to tell me their name and to tell me why they're called it, because there's always a really nice bit of backstory. Like, do you know why you're called Donna?
I don't actually, funnily enough. I have no idea.
Well, even that itself is a bit of a story, isn't it? That you don't know. But like, my name's Domenica, and it was because it means Sunday in Italian. It's because I was born on a Sunday. And also, I've got 2 older sisters, and I think my parents just run out of names. So they named me after the day of the week, and it could have been worse because Monday's Lunar Day. So, Domenica is not a bad name. So I always say to students, tell me why you're called that, because that's a bit of backstory. So I never name a character without thinking why they called it, because even if they're a minor character, it just gives you a tiny bit of backstory. Having said that, I've fallen into quite a few traps with names, like having too many with a similar letter beginning, too many M's in my books. Short names beginning with C, like I've got way too many Claras and Chloes and Claires. Something about that I really like. When I wrote The Nighthawks, as soon as it came out, and of course it's really lovely these days, isn't it, because you hear from readers so quickly. So as soon as it came out, by the end of the day, people were saying, oh, is Neil Topham in this book related to Neil Topham in A Room Full of Bones? No, it's just a mistake. Obviously, something about that name I really like. So if anyone has a Neil Topham version, there's a bit of a collector's item, because subsequent editions it's been changed to Neil Thomas. So I used exactly the same name. Obviously, something about Neil's that appeals Neil's, isn't it? But it is one of those names that is quite short and it's easy to say, and it does maybe date you a little bit. I don't think many babies now called Neil. So the answer is I really find names interesting and relevant, but I'm not the best at choosing them.
Yeah, I'm really amazed at how much trouble. I mean, you know, when you have so many books and so many characters, I can imagine it is difficult. And yeah, finding new ones.
It really, sometimes you think, what are people called? How can I do it? I mean, there is, and I'm sure you know, there is like such a thing as a random name generator, which you can just go onto. And it is quite good because you can tell, say, when they were born and where they're from. And that's quite useful, but somehow it never quite does it. I think it has to be something out of your head. And sometimes you think, oh, that's exactly what that character's called, and I try and sort of stick with that first, you know, thinking, oh, that's what they're called, but it's not always foolproof.
No. I must admit, I saw a guy's name the other day and it was so cool that I've got it in the notes on my phone just in case it comes in handy, because it was so cool. I'm like, that is such a cool name. I'm going to need to keep hold of that for later.
Some names are very cool. My niece Elly, for some reason, has always had friends with the best names. So I wouldn't be able to use them in a book because she would spot it. But, you know, I do think some people have amazing names. Domenica De Rosa is not a bad name, but there's some amazing names around.
Do you hide any secret jokes, messages, or Easter eggs in your books?
I don't think so. Consciously, there might be a little bit of stuff in the most recent Ruth book. I said Ruth never trusts anyone who quotes Shakespeare, and anyone who knows me knows that's a big thing of mine, because I really love Shakespeare, and I've got a bad memory for lots of things, but I've got a very good memory for quotes, so I do know loads of things off by heart, loads of Shakespeare off by heart. So that was a little bit of a joke that only people who knew me would guess that. That's a bit of a dig at myself. So occasionally, I think I might have had Brighton football team win in a couple of books, which doesn't happen so much in real life. Not consciously, but of course there are things that you would spot if you did know me.
Yeah, I'm a Luton Town supporter, so although we did all right last season, to be fair,
well, actually, we had a good season this season, but it's one of those things. If you support a club like Luton or Brighton, you're never totally secure, are you? That's So.
Yeah, bless them. Yeah, I mean, they got to play also. I knew we would win. It was fine. I was totally fine. But
and is that true about Mad Hatter coming from the fact that they used arsenic or something in the making of hats and it made people go mad?
I don't know, actually. I'll have to Google that. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, well, I might be a useless little bit of information and that's why the Mad Hatter but I know it's because Luton is where they made hats. So
yeah, it still has a hat factory. It obviously doesn't make hats. It's like a venue for artsy stuff, which is really cool. But yeah.
Really cool.
What was I just going to ask you? I've totally gone off track now.
Where were we? Arsenic, hats, Luton. We've gone off on a bit of a
which I usually do anyway. That's what I was going to ask you. What's the most interesting thing you've come across doing research for your books?
Oh, quite a lot of really interesting things. One of the interesting things I was told quite early on by a forensic archaeologist, who obviously specialise in digging and you know, digging things up, and they're called in to consult by the police when buried bones are found, was that you don't find nettles unless there's been some sort of human interaction. So I think it's to do with the nitrates in the soil or something. So if you have nettles in the garden, you could have a dead body there. So nettles only occur when there's been some sort of human activity. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Yeah, and there've been a few sort of good archaeology ones. Like there was something about pot polish, which is found on bones if there's been cannibal activity, they've been cooked in a pot, which I thought that was quite interesting. But it's not necessarily cannibal, but if it was sort of cooked in a pot, so particular sheen on the bones, I'm sure I've used that in a book. So yeah, there've been a few little interesting bits of information that I do squirrel away like a lot of writers.
Oh, yeah, I didn't know about that. Oh, yeah.
I love the way that archaeologists can look at a landscape and see it in a particular way, you know, and see sort of dips in it meaning something, and sort of lines that you can see from the air, you know, that can tell you that there's a place near me in Brighton where you can see is clearly it has been a sort of house there. You can see the lines. So who knows what's there. So I found all that ghost lines, they're called sometimes, and it can be a house. And I remember my husband, who is an archaeologist, he did a dig in Preston Park because they're just outside Brighton, because there's a big Roman villa there, and they were really excited and they thought they'd found a Roman villa, but actually what it was a tank, and it was a tank that was built in the Second World War to test tanks, to test whether they were water. So what a strange thing to find, a tank to test tanks, but not a Roman villa, sadly.
Yeah. And bones are just amazing, aren't they? You know, when I held a bone, I can't believe it's, I guess porous is the word, but you think they're these really solid things, which they are, but they've got loads of holes in. It's like, how is that so strong?
And
yeah,
so
it's full of little,
yeah, yes,
crazy.
And there's so many things that, you know, can tell, like, you know, the feces, I think they're called the growing ends that are there in children's bones, and so many things can be told from bones. And also I find it really fascinating when they do isotope analysis, you know, that the mineral analysis, because it can tell you where somebody's grown up, you know, sort of on teeth and things like that, because bones renew themselves every 7 years, but teeth don't. So once you've got your adult teeth, they're there, and they've got a trace of, you know, everything you've ever eaten. It's really fascinating.
Yeah, it is. It's insane, and yeah, just awesome. I loved
It's
because
interesting in sort of in a more serious way as well. I've heard it said that forensics is the voice of the victim, and I think that's a really, you know, interesting thing that's been covered by quite a lot of crime writers like Lynn Anderson. And you know, when you look at we have a forensic a character who's an expert in forensics. You know, that they are speaking for the victim. The victim is telling their own story. Hopefully, they're pointing their own finger at the culprit, which I think is very cool.
Yeah, I think I first saw that with Kathy Wright. So I started reading Kathy Wright's when I was sort of an older teenager, and I think she started saying that because she's a real life forensic
She's a real anthropologist, isn't she?
Yeah, so she's the reason I've done a bloody forensics degree.
Is she? Well, yeah, you are. That's a good thing to do, and now you're an expert too. So
yeah, I always said if I met her, then I'd say thanks. And she's at Harrogate, isn't she? So I can actually genuinely say thank you.
Oh yes, well, make sure that you do. Yeah, because she was there, I think, in 2017 as well, and I spoke to her, and she seemed lovely. So do tell her that.
Yeah, well, I have to try not to be shy. I went really shy last year.
I have to say that I'm sure for her it would be a wonderful thing to hear. So do say that to her.
Yeah, I will.
She's probably fed up with people saying, I became a writer because of you. And you're like, I became a forensic scientist because of you. I think she'd be really excited by that.
Yeah, actually, yeah, I think that's very cool. Yeah, I will make sure, and I'll make my friends make me if I get shy. So they will. They'll bully me into doing it. When you're editing your book, what's your most overused word or phrase?
Oh, again, what a fab question. I'm a bit of a one for crazy, as in like the gate was hanging crazily on its hinges. bit of a bad one. But I do overuse words like sort of slightly, just, briefly, those words. And I remember talking with Sarah Pinborough once, and she obviously author of Behind Her Eyes, really brilliant author, and she said that she had to cut some words from a manuscript, and she went through it cutting every one of those words that they're sort of like maybe perhaps, and she said she thinks women writers might use more of them. It's like a little bit of, you know, distance, a little bit of self-deprecation, or maybe perhaps slightly, and maybe I don't know if that's at all scientific, maybe we would like to have more of those words, but one of the things that I do a bit of search for is slightly. She's slightly afraid. She's slightly worried. Well, she's just worried. She's just afraid, not slightly anything, but that is one of my words.
I love it. I love how every author knows it like that. There's no hesitation. They know their words.
And there are ticks too. Like I noticed that characters in my book sigh a lot. Oh, he sighed, and during lockdown, when we're all in quite close proximity, I learned from my family that I sigh a lot. I just how annoying. And so that's obviously why my characters sigh. So yeah, now I do check them, because I think it's quite a useful one for if you don't want them to speak, but you want them to make some sort of, I don't know if it's called phatic sound that sort of shows that they're listening, like grunting or snorting. My mind just goes out and sighing. So stop them sighing.
I love it when people shrug and nod as well.
Yeah, shrugging is a thing, isn't it? He shrugged. We don't shrug that much, really, do we? Maybe
no, I mean, you think in books that everyone's shrugging all the time.
Yeah, that's really true, actually. I think that is just another one of those things, isn't it? You don't want people to necessarily speak, but you want them to show they've heard.
Yeah, like padding.
Yes,
everyone pads across the room. I've never padded across the room in my life, I don't think.
I've got to say Ruth does pad in one of the books, but I know what you're saying. Lots of people, and I probably only noticed it because I've, it's a bit of an overused thing, but yes.
But as like someone said, there's only so many ways you can say that someone walked across the room. They walked, or they tiptoed, or they creaked, or they padded. Like, there really isn't many ways that you can say someone walked across the room. So
and you've got, just like said, we all just use said all the time. Hopefully it does disappear, but if you read books of a certain era, there are lots of other words for that, including he ejaculated, which weirdly we don't use very much anymore.
No, funny that. I think we all think we're adults, and we'd all snort and laugh because we're just children, aren't we?
I think there's an Agatha Christie books which start Poirot ejaculated. You better just avoid those words, and so many exclamation marks as well. I'm a big Georgette Hare fan. I'm always rereading Georgette Hare, but almost every bit of dialogue is exclamation marks, and now we're very sparing with those, and it makes those books seem very exciting, people exclaiming all the time. But now we're a bit quieter with that, aren't we? We're just shrugging now, and sighing.
Yeah. If you're able to spend a day with any author, dead or alive, who would you like to spend a day with?
Oh, it depends who'd be fun and who'd be. I mean, I would love to have met Wilkie Collins, who's my favourite author. Absolute massive fan of his books, particularly The Woman in White and No Name and The Moonstone. I'm really a fan of his. I mean, I think he was quite an interesting character. I think he had two separate establishments, two different women, neither of whom he was married to, and he was quite liberal in lots of ways and forward thinking, but maybe not so much in others. But I think he'd be very interesting. I think he'd be interesting to spend time with. So maybe I would. And Shakespeare, again, I would love to know him, whoever he was. I would love to have spent time with him. So yeah, definitely Shakespeare. Love to have met Agatha Christie, Georgette Hare, any of those people.
And who have you fangirled over most that you have met? Because you must have met some massive names.
Oh. Well, no one's above the whole fangirl. I probably did it with Kathy Rice. I did it with Val McDermott first time I met her. I remember really, I'm such a fan of yours. And now she's a friend, which is sort of amazing to think, really. But yeah, she was very nice. I've had a little back to her a little bit. But yeah, so also I was a big fan of Reginald Hill. And I'm lucky that I got to meet him, because sadly he died a little bit afterwards, but I met him at Harrogate, and it was exactly that thing. I was so, oh my God, I'm such a fan. And he was so nice. And he said to me, oh, that's lovely. And what's your book about? And I had just written The Crossing Places, the first Ruth book. And you know how when you want to say something brilliant, like something that would really make you think, wow, and all I could think of to say was, Norfolk. And he said, oh, lovely, yes, well, bye. And moved on his ways. I wish I could have said something more exciting, but yeah, wonderful to meet him. What a terrific writer he is still.
Yeah. Oh, bless. If you're able to travel to any period of time, either forwards or backwards, where would you go?
I'd go to ancient Rome. I mean, like everyone says, you have to sort of slightly make the disclaimer that you'd have to be rich, and obviously I would not want to be a not rich person. But actually, in some ways, I picked Rome because it wasn't a bad time to be a woman if you were rich. Roman women were very powerful matriarchs. That they were educated. It would be lovely to be in Italy. Romans, of course, were famous for having really lovely baths and running water, all of which I would really enjoy. I would, love it. I mean, they had, if you go to Pompeii or Ostia, they had like tower, they had high-rise houses, three or four-story houses. There are a million people in ancient Rome. Really was an incredible civilization when you think about it. So I think I might like to have been a Roman matron. I feel I'm quite well suited to it. I think the toga would have been rather lovely and flattering to wear. I could spend my time having lovely baths, and it was not a bad time to be a woman. You had quite a lot of power.
Yeah, that's a good reason.
And nice weather, yeah. So yeah, ancient Rome it is.
And togas seem like they'd be quite cool and stuff as well.
Yes, very good. Yes. Matt might wear one to Harrogate.
Yeah. I'm not sure that's gonna. I don't think anyone would be surprised.
Yeah. No, that's a good thing. And yes, I do remember going to a toga party when I was a student a long time ago. But yes, togas are fun. Yeah. A rather lovely hair. They had sort of quite nice hair, sort of plaited round, and I felt like I could maybe do that as well. So
yeah, I always think I can plait my hair, and then it just doesn't. I think it's too fine. That's what I'm sticking to.
Well, mine's quite thick, and that's bad as well, and sort of curly. So, but when my daughter was young, I loved plaiting her hair. Poor girl, she's grown up now, and I still would love to put your hair in lovely French plaits. It's so nice to do on somebody else. She's got lovely long hair. It's perfect to do it with.
Yeah, but apparently that's weird, especially if you don't warm them. You just go up and start playing with their hair. Apparently this is weird.
Apparently not. Who knew? Apparently you're not allowed to do that.
I know. Sports, honestly.
Tucking people's labels. I often feel a bit like I want to do that with people I don't know. But no, don't do that. That just looks weird.
Really random funny story. I was working in a different grade shop with a guy, and someone had forgot something on the counter. So he ran round and put it in his pocket. And then afterwards, and he was the shyest, sort of, most awkward person. And we ended up laughing for the next hour or so because it's like, what did you do that for? And it's like, I don't know.
No, but why would you? But sometimes you do things like that, don't you?
Yeah, it just didn't, and he just done it. Like there was no hesitation, he just put it in, and it was, we ended up laughing for ages because it was so bad. I don't even think the poor guy knew what to think really, and suddenly someone's hand to your pocket, another guy to a guy as well. Oh my god. I
remember leaving a party. It's just struck another strange memory in my head. I mean, leaving a party when I was a student with a friend, and we had a bottle of open wine with us, like you do, and a dog came by and she just poured it on him. And I said, why did you do that? Why did you put? And she said, I don't know. And the funny thing was, the dog just looked at us and said, oh, no, not again. Not another student pouring wine. And we didn't mind at all. It was so strange. Sometimes people do strange things.
Oh, dear. Who was your first celebrity crush?
Oh, well, weirdly, maybe you won't think this is weird, but I really, really liked Christopher Lee in the Dracula films. And I was quite young. And I guess because I had older sisters, maybe they watched Dracula or something, I don't know. But I didn't really realise that he was meant to be spooky. I just thought, he's really cool. I love his big house. I love his clothes, and I found out afterwards that he was partly Italian, and I think his grandmother was an opera singer. So maybe there was some sort of Italian thing. So I really did like Christopher Lee at a young age, which is quite a strange celebrity crush. And then maybe Starsky and Hutch, big fan of his. Oh, and actually, this is a link here because I'm a tennis fan. I loved Ilie Nastase, and of course he is Romanian, so maybe there is a Transylvanian link there. But you loved Nastase. I feel very, very disloyal to him when I wear my Stan Smith trainers because, of course, that terrible final when he lost to Stan Smith. So yeah, I was a big Nastase fan.
Yeah, that's the first. So yeah, interesting.
Oh, good.
Yeah. It's I love. Usually it's Donny Osmond or the other guy. I can't
Yeah,
think of what his name is now.
David Essex or one of those. I wasn't a fan of any of those people really. Who was yours then? Can you remember yours?
The first person I really remember liking, I think, is Robbie Williams, but I must have liked people before then, but he's the first person I really remember thinking, yeah, he's really nice.
Yeah, and it's quite a sort of potent thing, isn't it? You sort of think they're looking directly at you and speaking directly to you, so yeah, it's quite a potent thing.
Yeah, if only. What was I just going to ask you as well? What's one of my other fun questions? Gone blank again. Genuinely can't think. I was going to ask you actually before, if you were fictionally murdered, who would you want to solve your case?
Oh, okay, another good one. Yeah, it'd have to be somebody. Who would I want to solve my case? I mean, I've just written a Miss Marple story for the Miss Marple and new Miss Marple anthology, which is a terrific honour to be asked. But I wouldn't want her, because she would probably sit there saying things like, "Oh, that reminds me of little Johnny in the village," and I'd want someone to kind of get after it a bit quicker than that, really, and sort of get onto. I think I would go for Sergeant Cuff in the Moonstone, because he's a really good detective. He's the first fictional detective in British fiction, anyhow. And he's a great character. He's really down to earth. He's a working class guy, comes into this sort of posh house and is absolutely not at all overawed by it. And he's got a very clear way of setting about murders. He was inspired by the real Inspector Wincher. So he has a lot of his characteristics. So I would say fictional crime solving would be done, and he gets it right as well. He writes out the murder, because because in those days, like the mistress of the house employed him privately, because I don't think there was a police force as such. So there was a police force, but there was sort of detectives. So she employed him privately, and then sacked him, so she didn't want him anymore. But he wrote down the name of the culprit in the sealed envelope, and he was right. So a Sergeant Cuff, if for me.
Awesome. And where's the strangest or funniest place you've ever woken up?
Oh, strangest or funny place I've ever woken up? Gosh. I did wake up in a French garage once for all sorts of strange reasons. Going on holiday with some friends, and our car broke down, and we were towed through the forest of Fontainebleau, which was quite strange and spooky. And I think I must have fallen asleep during that long towing bit, and then woke up in this French garage. So that's probably the best I can do for that one. Very nice. They brought us croissants and things, so they were very nice.
Oh, bless. Yeah, I know we have such a thing against the French, don't we? But they're not all bad.
No, not at all. I do think, though, that and I love France, but when you go through France, we quite often drive to Italy, and motorways in motorway service stations in Britain and France are so awful. When you get to Italy, it's like a holiday in itself. The service station's so clean and lovely. The food is delicious. You get freshly cooked pasta, and the coffee's lovely. So I do think, in that way, I have to say, you have to just keep driving through France till you get to Italy. For that reason alone. But France is wonderful.
Yeah, noted. I went to Paris and I wasn't that much of a fan, so.
But Paris maybe not the place to go. So like this, I don't know, but I mean, the Dordogne and south of France is really lovely, and Brittany is, it's such a beautiful big country, isn't it? I suppose that's the thing.
Yeah, they're on my list, but yeah.
So lots of places to explore first before you give up on it totally.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I haven't given up, but yeah. If I was to ask your nearest and dearest what your most annoying habits are, what would they say?
Sighing, probably. Sighing, Shakespeare quoting, all those things, really. And I think they might well say both of those. Singing hymns, I do still sing hymns in a not the most. My son's a musician; he's a classical pianist, but goodness knows where we got that from, because I can't play a note, and I've obviously got a really bad singing voice. So probably that puts it. So maybe singing hymns, sighing, quoting Shakespeare, those sort of things are all quite annoying. Oh, and telling you the end of Agatha Christie things on TV, that's really annoying.
Yeah.
Or just saying in a really well, don't get fond of that character.
Oh God, yeah, that was. So you said you go to Harrogate. Are you attending any of the other festivals throughout the summer?
Yeah, so I am going to be at Harrogate in July. I'm going to be at St Hilda's Crime in Oxford in August, which I'm really looking forward to. And then I'm going to be at Bloody Scotland in September. Obviously, as you and I know, but I will just explain. Bloody Scotland is the name of the festival. I'm not being horrible about Scotland. I love Scotland. So Bloody Scotland Festival in Stirling. So, and also in September. September's a busy month for me. For the first time in my life, I'm going to go to the Agatha Christie Festival in Torquay.
Oh wow!
Which I'm really looking forward to, and I'm hoping, because you know that Agatha Christie was a great surfer. I think she's the first Western woman to stand upright on a surfboard. So in honor of her, I'm going to go for a swim. I love wild swimming, so I shall swim when I'm there.
I learned this at Harrogate last year during the quiz.
It was in the quiz, wasn't it? And I
Yeah.
actually did know that because I had an Agatha Christie round, and because I was writing that Agatha Christie story then, I'd been on a real Agatha Christie read through. Normally on my quiz team, I'm very much a spare part who keeps saying, "Oh, I knew that" 2 minutes after Mark's written it down. But Mark Edwards is our team captain with the pink hair. But this year I was able to come into my own on that round, so I felt quite proud of myself. Are you quizzing again this year?
I'm waiting to see what my friends are doing, actually. How hard was that quiz? It was so hard.
We came second. Our team came second, partly because we had Claire McGowan on our team, who is totally brilliant and knows everything. But we came second, and I thought, but then the team that won, like Mick Herron's team, how many things do they know? I mean, they're just unbeatable, really. But yes, we're going to try and beat them. I mean, I said to somebody, well, let's get Mick really drunk. And they said, do you know, even really drunk, he would know all the answers. And I think that is probably true.
Yeah, because was that Richard Osman's team as well, and he's super smart anyway.
I mean, Richard Osman, Sarah Hillary, Mick Herron, that's not fair, is it? But we did come second, and I do feel that we might have peaked at second. But yes, but Mars School was Mark Edwards, me, William Shaw, Susie Holliday, Claire McGowan. So it was a good fun team.
Oh yeah, I can imagine. Oh, William's lovely as well, as he's such
William's
a sweetheart.
Great, so nice. Was with him at the Daggers on Wednesday, because we're both from Brighton, so we travelled up together, travelled back, ran for our train to Brighton, got on it fuming on the train. It was about midnight, chatting, and then said to William, "We're on the wrong train," and we were.
Oh no!
Train, so we had to end up doing some nightmare rush through sort of West Norwood, East Croydon, to try and get on a train, the last train to Brighton. So, but it's nobody I'd rather do that with. He's great.
Yeah, I don't think I've met him yet, actually, so it'd be nice to finally meet him. Hopefully, over the summer.
Have you interviewed him for that? Because he's a great interviewee. He's always got something fun to say.
Yeah, I've interviewed him once, actually, so yeah, I loved it. It was great.
Come and say hello at Harrogate, because he'll be there.
I will. And Graham Bartlett, who also lives in Brighton, I've obviously, his book's been out this week and stuff, and he's got a panel at Harrogate, and he's banned me from sitting in the front row.
Oh no! Are you going to put him off? Does he say?
Well, I guess that's what he thinks, which is very mean. As if I'd be that immature to put him off at Harrogate.
No, I'm sure he wouldn't be put off easily. Graham is terrific as well. I'm really happy to see Bad for Good, which I love, doing so well. I think it's hit the bestseller list this week, so I'm so pleased for him. But
yeah,
he is obviously famously ex-chief superintendent at Brighton and Hove, and Leslie Thompson, who I don't know if you know at all. She's another lovely, brilliant writer. Would be a great interviewee. Anyhow, Leslie and I run this course at Westdean, which is it's a crime writing course. So Westdean is a kind of stately home in West Sussex, and they do courses, and Leslie and I do this crime writing course there. And on the last weekend of the course, we get Graham to come in and do like a murder investigation. It's really good because he does the whole, the outline on the floor, the police tapes up, and Graham is there. And this time, Graham said, what should we do? He's always trying to do something different. And Leslie and I were saying, well, some of our students are really struggling a bit with dialogue. So wouldn't it be fun if you interviewed us both as suspects? And Graham said, oh, that's great. Yeah. Well, so we came up with sort of a scenario, and he interviewed us both. Oh, my God. Lovely Graham. Such a nice guy. Terrifying when he's interviewing you. All I can say is I confessed. And I hadn't even done it. I confessed within minutes. Leslie was much tougher. She was there going, oh, well, don't know. But I was absolutely, Graham was like, are you sure that's what happened? No, I'm not sure. So, he has another side to him, but no, he's a terrific guy, a great writer.
He's amazing. Yeah, Bad for Good, it's incredible. I loved it. As soon as I read it, I'm like, oh my God, it's awesome. Yeah.
I guess we sort of all, because he'd written non-fiction stuff, knew he could write. But I mean, the plotting and characterization is so good. So yeah, it deserves its success, definitely.
It does. Yeah, I've shouted about it a little bit since.
Oh, good. Yeah, me too.
Yeah, bless him.
I think it says on the cover that Elly Griffiths likes it. So I really do.
Yeah. Yeah, you and Peter James, obviously, because they're good friends. Someone else, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, Peter and Graham have worked together quite a bit. Yes.
Yeah. So are you working on anything at the moment, and what's coming next for you?
So I'm halfway through, a bit more than halfway through Ruth 15, which is called The Last Remains. And the next book of mine to come out will be in October, which will be Bleeding Heart Yard, which is a book sort of standalone, but also featuring Di, as she is now, Harbinder Kaur. And in this book, she is promoted and goes to London and joins the Met, and Bleeding Heart Yard is a real place in London. So that's October. Excuse me.
Fabulous. Well, I don't think I have any more questions for you, unless you think there's anything I haven't asked you that you want to tell us about.
Oh, no, till my voice is giving out now a bit, but thank you so much. It's been really lovely chatting to you. So thanks for having me on your show.
So just before we go, would you like to tell everyone where they can find out more about you and where they can get your books from?
Of course. So you can find about me. I'm on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Elly Griffiths. I really love hearing from readers, so do get in touch. You can find my books in most bookshops, I hope, or in your local library. The last Ruth book was called The Locked Room, which will be paperback in August, and the next book out from me will be Bleeding Heart Yard in October, and then there'll be another Ruth in February. So you're never too far away from an Elly Griffiths book. It's like a rat, really.
Yeah, I've started The Locked Room this morning, so I'm loving it so far.
Oh, good. I'm very glad to hear that.
Fabulous. Well, thanks very much.
Thank you, Donna. Thank you very much.